So I'm very excited today to have Chris Duffey on the podcast. Chris leads global partnerships for GenAI for Adobe. Chris, welcome to What If So What.
Great to be here, Jim. Great to reconnect.
So Chris, give us a background on your focus at Adobe. I know you've done a lot in your career. So what is your focus now, and what brought you to this role within Adobe?
Yeah, it's been quite an exciting journey from a long-term perspective, but maybe even more so from the last 12 months or so. It's
Mm.
been a wonderful journey in terms of the adoption of generative AI specifically into the marketing realm. And we're seeing that it truly is unlocking infinite possibilities for everyone across the entire content supply chain, everyone from the marketers to the agencies to the media suppliers, and it's really I don't say it too gently, but it's quite exciting to see the transformation that is happening across the industry. So specifically, my focus is on a newer offering at Adobe called Adobe Firefly. And if you haven't played with
Mhm.
it, I know you and your team have, but if some of the listeners haven't, really encourage everyone to take it for a spin. I was on it last night with one of our new beta products, Adobe Firefly Video. And so it's really a text prompt that you can generate video out of. And it really is quite exciting. I don't think I've been that excited since I first got introduced to Photoshop 25 years or so ago. And so Firefly, you can think of in terms of three or four pillars. The first being a product in of itself. If you go to
Mhm.
firefly.adobe.com, you can go there and do some text prompting for image generation, video generation. We've got some beta products in terms of 3D generation. The next one is an extension of that. We call it Firefly Custom Models, and that allows customers to upload their own private library of content or data. And so then the system trains off that data in a firewalled environment so the outputs are very
Wow.
customized. And then thirdly, more recently, is Firefly services. And essentially, you can think of it as APIs for that last mile in terms of production capabilities. And now you can create in the hundreds of thousands of variations with these APIs. We have about 25 to 30 in market right now, and those really unlock the possibility of scalability. In addition to that, the fourth pillar would be something we call content credentials. It's part of a broader industry-wide initiative, which is the CAI, the Content Authenticity Initiative. And so that is comprised with hardware
Hmm.
companies, software companies, and media companies, maybe 3,000 or so. And so you can think of it in terms of almost a digital nutritional label where you can
Oh,
see
that's great.
embedded into the
Yeah.
content that's getting generated, how it was trained, how it was augmented, how it was distributed, and we're getting very close to how it performed as well.
We'll get into some of that, and I mean, this is a great time to be in this space, and it's great to hear that you've landed here, and especially given more of your history in the agency world and the media world, right? So it's you mentioned Photoshop 25 years ago. That was a great product back then, and but with these opportunities come new new concerns. Like I saw this quote not too recently. Like the guy who invented the airplane also invented the airplane crash. It's kind of morbid, but yeah, it does create some new responsibilities. I think we'll touch on that, and that lineage is kind of important. I didn't know that was part of the product suite. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, it kind of brings me to this question, and I was actually talking to an analyst the other day about digital native companies or becoming, transforming or giving birth to AI native companies. So I think for a long time there were deep, whether it's D2C, direct to consumer commerce, and these sort of digital native companies that kind of sprung up, or digital native banking, but that certainly affected the CMO's role, right, for a long time. And I feel, we're on, over a decade into this sort of I don't know what we're up to now, but maybe a Web 2.0 or age of the customer or customer centricity and digital first has really dominated, I think, a lot of CMO priorities, way beyond just sort of the brand or, you know, brand marketing and evolved performance marketing as well. But this idea of, I'm intrigued by this idea of like an AI native business or an AI native company. How do you see that? Do you see kind of that same sort of transformation? And, how do you see that affecting the marketer's role or the CMO's role within a brand?
Yeah, it's a wonderful insight, which I fully agree. In many ways, we've been here before with the introduction of newer technologies over the last number of years, and there is a pattern. Every 10 or so years, we get introduced to a new technology. We have the mobile revolution, we had the social revolution,
Right.
and to your point, we are now uh, already deep into the AI revolution. I would also offer there's stages of the AI. We started out with probabilistic or predictive AI, which quickly gave birth to generative. Many are now kind of identifying that we're even moving beyond generative or adding on to the generative area into agentic AI, which is a
Right.
more proactive use case for AI. And so, with all that said, I think the implications on marketing and more specifically CMOs is much like those previous technologies. They did slightly change the capabilities and the roles of the CMO and the marketer and the creatives and the agencies. Much like that, we are seeing an evolution of the CMOs specifically. My hope and hypothesis is the CMO, the marketer, is going to be the central source of truth for a business. And so, what I mean by that is it is now going to house all of the insights because with generative AI and agentic AI, we have the capability to create faster, more insightful, and have a faster round trip of in marketplace performance and have
Mhm.
that data come back to not only inform marketing disciplines, but also the product, the sales, and so on. And so I
Right.
think we're going to see a increased value of marketers going forward because of generative AI and agentic AI.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've been kind of seeing the same thing as more products become connected. Whether it's kind of an ambient computing or passive computing in a retailer, or it's a shop floor, that's collecting all kinds of data, or it's the product itself that is phoning home. To kind of go back to a really a really old phrase, like it's more data about customer behavior, maybe customer intent and certainly, how we utilize that to personalize,
Yeah.
what consumers or what end users are looking for. I remember, talking to other CMOs, like, boy, you're going to have a real content problem because if you're going to personalize, you have to have a personalized message, and I think this solves a lot of those problems, right?
No.
In terms of
And
production.
and I think you raised it earlier with the introduction of new technologies also introduces new considerations and
Yeah.
contemplations. What is the optimal tech stack, which I'm heavily focused on? What are the
Mhm.
implications of that technology on the current state and future state of processes? And then how does that ultimately inform better go-to-market strategies, inform the product in of itself, the sales
Right.
cycle, and so on. And so, it really is having a foundational impact on businesses globally. I've been almost evolving my terminology from transformation to reinvention because it really is reinventing
Yeah.
businesses from the ground up going forward.
Well, that's why I'm intrigued by this comment I heard the other day, AI native, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I got to start thinking about it that way. I think I was sort of intuitively thinking about it, but you're right. It's sort of starting over again. If we could, if this content supply chain or this interaction could be AI driven instead of, we're guessing, we're putting teams together, doing research, hoping that it's going to pan out, in a few months. And now we have, an AI native company can automate those processes, right, in seconds potentially. So how are other ways that this, I guess you're the organizations you're talking to, the customers you're talking to, what sort of when you sort of rank maybe a couple of the problems that they're trying to solve, sort of in business terms, are they trying to be better? Are they trying to be faster? Are they trying to be cheaper? What, yeah, there's more to it. There's more to life than better, faster, cheaper. But what are you hearing is sort of the reasons why this adoption is taking place? Are they there yet? Are they just still experimenting, or do you think there are specific business problems or marketing problems that you find customers are looking to solve with some
A
of these solutions?
absolutely, and obviously there's a spectrum, a
Sure.
across the industries, but I think, things have evolved very quickly over the last 24 months. We almost took a page from the digital transformation where we tried to apply it to existing frameworks and
Mm,
processes, within the first, few months, a couple years ago. I think that now has expanded and matured into a more fundamental, consideration for the ingestion of AI. And so what we've seen over the last 12 months or so is the need to map out a 3 to 5 year AI vision and then
mm,
reverse engineer to get to that vision across all aspects, and layers of a business. So I would say that is probably, first and foremost for, industries, currently. The second big, vector of consideration is then, as you pointed out, the need for responsible AI, and that has multiple
yeah.
considerations in terms of how do you build, different models, whether it be LLMs, whether it be your own proprietary data, and so on. And so there's a continuous need to optimize for responsible AI. In parallel, I've been very heartened to see that the public and private sector are converging, and that gap, which has traditionally been a bit broad, is really coming closer together. There's some great work
Mm,
coming out of Utah. The senator there is building an incubator where unusual use cases that
hmm,
kind of color outside of the lines. He's
yeah.
built a incubator where you can
Interesting.
bring those, challenges and work together to help create the policy. The senator from Texas has offered, um, a safe space or a safe room
Hmm.
almost where you can showcase the use case to them, and then he can give some guidance, within a 30-day, grace period. And so I think those are really wonderful indications of how the public and private sector are working together. The third aspect then is there's an element of almost, I don't know what I don't know, or I can't
Hmm.
imagine what I can't imagine. And so there is a need for continuous upskilling in terms of what are the current capabilities of the technology, and then how do I apply that and absorb that within
Hmm.
the organization. So I would say those are primarily the three things that we're seeing universally across use cases and industries.
That's interesting. I mean, I think one of the things that we've done is we're building, and we've seen a couple of instances, is just a prompt library. Like that's a great way to. We found that that's just the kind of to your I don't know what I don't know is kind of introducing people to just fundamental prompts. I mean, the most simplistic things we found can really just very quickly orient someone to what's possible with generative AI because there's still this concept like like hey, for example, like choosing a headline, right? So read this and tell me a good headline. Then I said, well, I never thought of that. I've been right. I usually write the headline and then I write the copy. So just turning that around sometimes is the only trigger people need to kind of get the thoughts going, and we see that a lot. And I love this idea of behind responsible sort of I don't know what to call. I don't know what they call us. I'm gonna call it a responsibility lab, but as but that's a great idea. Kind of getting ahead of some of these problems, and I'm kind of drawn to like the trolley problem, right? People aren't familiar with that. It's kind of common among, autonomous vehicles and robotics, how does the machine choose what to do next, right? Do they save the passengers or save the poor souls on the
Mm,
sidewalk or
yeah.
on the railroad tracks? So sounds like you guys are, that's a way to kind of get in front of those things. No pun intended. Uh, but that's interesting and kind of a novel way of doing things.
Jim, you bring up a number of wonderful points. The first one really, I think, touches on maybe one of the big concerns across the marketing and creative industry is the impact on the craft of creativity. And
Yeah,
I think you highlighting the prompting is a wonderful example of how the skill set is being transformed from the craft traditionally over to a new
yeah,
form of creativity. I think creatives, there's going to be a renaissance in terms of language because adjectives can really
interesting.
have a profound effect. The adjectives that you use within the prompt can really dictate the
Oh,
outcome. And so I think artists are going to hopefully fall in love with the art of language on how it can
wow.
impact creativity going forward.
So if you're an English major, maybe you need to rethink your dream to write the great American novel. You just need to start, drawing out films
Well,
and imagery,
uh,
with Firefly. So that's a great point. Again, it's not just thinking about the solution; it's thinking about how you approach the problem differently.
yeah.
So that's great. Any just maybe just kind of final thought for folks. I have an idea on something. Having listened to this, we love to give people kind of one thing that they can kind of go do when they get back to their phone or safely in front of their screen. Well, what's one piece of advice if you're kind of either in a creative role or you rely on a creative team, to understand this possibility, or what's one thing you maybe one piece of advice or one thing they could do today?
I'd really advocate for this creator mindset. In many ways, technology was still somewhat of a heavy lift in terms of adoption. The technology is there now. Really unleash your creativity, your creator mindset, and feel free to get out there and start creating new products, new marketing programs. It really frees up ultimately opportunities. So I think we're entering the golden age of creativity and invention going forward.
That's great to hear. I love that sort of democratization of of,
Yeah.
of, of creativity and finding kind of the inner creator.
Yeah.
So, Chris, it's great. I really appreciate you joining us. And one of the things I'm going to go out and spend a little more time with Firefly. So,
Wonderful.
uh, appreciate you joining. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to What If, So What, a digital strategy podcast from Proficient with Jim Hertzfeld. We want to thank our Proficient colleagues J.D. Norman and Rick Bauer for our music. Subscribe to the podcast and don't miss a single episode. You can find this season along with show notes at proficient.com. Thanks for listening.